Good evening or good morning to everyone out there in YouTube land. I'm Christian Bladt and very excited to be doing a show here where we're going to talk about Star Wars Andor. And I guess we only have to do 4 of these because of the very interesting release schedule, which is one of the things that we'll talk about. But with me at the moment is Diallo Jackson. Diallo, how are you today? Great to see you again.
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I mean, I think that, interestingly, Andor for me was one of those. We're talking about season one for a moment. I was glad that they did a 3 episode drop then because
Mm-hmm.
it was a very the nice way to say is deliberate, but the fact of it is it moved very slowly, and then it started to pick up. And then by the end, I thought it was great, especially when you get to, when he ends up in the prison, when you've got Andy Serkis. I thought it ended really strong for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what I wasn't necessarily expecting was that season 2 would also start really small. I thought maybe we would keep the momentum, but then when you go 1 year later, like, oh boy, all right. The last time I saw something like that was Ghostbusters 2, and they said 5 years later. And it felt like it. But what were your thoughts on the initial season of Andor, specifically just season 1 for you?
So season one, I think Andor is a good show, but I had some issues with it, and so I think that the slowness of it that people talk about, I definitely recognize, but oddly, that wasn't an issue for me, really. And I have some reasons why I think it reads as slow to people, but
Yeah.
yeah, but for the most part, I actually think it's a pretty good, well-made show, but I have issues with it to the point where almost in like people love it so much, I'm always like, wait, slow down, slow down. And yeah, so
Yeah, no, and look, I think the thing about it is that, this was not the first Star Wars series on Disney Plus. We were kind of settling into an expectation for it, and I think that what I personally was surprised by and what I was impressed by was that it was adult, but in the sense that it was sophisticated and it was dealing with like, well, here's the formation of a rebellion.
mhm.
Let's not just deal with, throwing Molotov cocktails through windows. Let's talk about the politics and building into it. And it's not necessary. Like if you wrote it out, I would have been like, well, that sounds really boring. And at times it was, but it was sort of the realization that they did that. And there were enough people that I talked to that, they felt like it was the first time that they really got wrapped up in Star Wars since the original trilogy. And
Mhm.
I thought that far from perfect, it's just not what I was expecting. And
Mhm.
look, it's also sort of, we get this idea that Rogue One was a prequel to the main trilogy, specifically A New Hope. And this
Mhm.
was a prequel to that prequel. And then
Mhm.
we know from that prequel, we know that Cassian Andor is not going to be around for very long. But
Mhm.
going into that movie, we also knew it's like, oh, didn't those spies all die that got the Death Star plans? So it's interesting when you get that, But
Yeah.
I find him to be very compelling. I find seeing the inner workings of the Empire, specifically the Deirdre character. It's all something that I don't think I would have expected. It was like you'd get flashes of it in the old. I'm talking about during the original trilogy, the Marvel series, because they had like a monthly comic to fill out. So it was there's a lot of like inner workings and some of the machinations. I'm
Mhm.
hoping that our friend Ryan can hear us and we can hear him. Hi, Ryan. How are you?
Oh, here we go.
Good. Is that any better?
That is much better because earlier I couldn't hear you at all.
Yeah, I don't know what the heck happened. I've been using this mic for a while, and I don't know. It's not picking up on my little thing here, so I went to my backup mic, which is not as good. So I apologize for.
Oh no, it's fine.
worse
Yeah,
audio, but
oh no, it sounds great. Yeah, there's
Ryan
a
looks
level.
like he's piloting a Rebel TIE fighter.
Pretty much. So this is my sim racing rig, but I do have a joystick here because I also play Star Citizen. So when I'm so it kind of is my little cockpit here.
Wow.
Well, I'm glad you're here with us, Ryan. And we were sort of just catching up and thinking about what we thought of the previous season, the initial season of Andor. So why don't you tell our audience that first, your thoughts about season 1 of Andor before we dive into season 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me on. I
course.
apologize for the issues kicking right off the bat, but I mean, I absolutely loved it. I recall in Rogue One when Cassian is talking to Jen and he says, you know, the things I've had to do for the rebellion. And I remember the first time I was watching that movie thinking, well, that's what I want to, I want to see that movie. You know, that sounds really interesting. And then to see that he's already, you know, killed his informant in the beginning of the movie. So you start thinking about the kind of dirty, scuzzy things that went on in those early days of the rebellion. So as soon as they announced the show, I was like, I'm on board. That sounds awesome. And it pretty much gave me, you know, everything I was looking for there.
Yeah, and what I was saying to Diallo before you popped in was just that it was sort of like on a little bit more of a sophisticated storytelling than what we're typically used to getting from Star Wars. And as the series, as that first season ended, I felt like it had ramped up in such a way. It did start very slow. And, you know, I did think it was kind of interesting to see sort of, you know, we're heading into like the height of the rebellion where they're about to start to really have some success, namely blowing up the Death Star. So I did find that interesting. But as we look towards this 3-episode drop of season 2, the interesting thing, and I said this a few minutes ago, was that I didn't necessarily expect that we were going to reset and start off really slow again. But giving us 3 episodes at once, it definitely helps. Diallo, heading into these 3 episodes, we'll talk big picture and then we'll break down each storyline. How did you feel at the end of these 3 episodes, which, by the way, each of them was very close to an hour, 45 to 50 minutes, which Disney Plus, sometimes they'll give you a show that's like 29 or 32 minutes, you know? So these were pretty close to, I would say these were full length episodes.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did I feel after the first
after all 3 of them? Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the point. My biggest takeaway, I think, is that if this was a show that just dealt with everything except for Andor, and it was just a drama that had no like plot point to get to, I'd actually probably enjoy it more. But it's ironically for me, the parts with Andor are the most perplexing. And I think, you know, kind of taken from my extending from season 1, the way he's characterized and the way he moves through scenes and missions or whatever you want to call them is it's partly why I'm dissatisfied with the writing of the show. And it was like on full display in season 2. So I have a lot of issues.
Well, and we will dive into those issues. Ryan, as we got this 3-episode drop, what were your thoughts after the end of episode 3?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty much what I expected to get from the show after season 1. Knowing that we were going to do a time jump, I thought there'd be a little bit of a settle in point before we got back into it. Originally, I didn't like the idea of doing the 3-episode releases. I kind of liked that, being able to digest, everybody kind of theorize and talk about the episode for the week before we get the next one. And I felt like releasing 3 of them at the time some of it was gonna get lost in translation. But after watching that second episode, which definitely was kind of like a setup episode, thinking about that one coming out on its own, I think would have been kind of rather weak. But them coming out in kind of 3-episode arcs, I'm assuming all 4 weeks will be kind of 3-episode arcs, similar to how the first one was. I think it'll be perfectly fine. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. Diallo, I'm interested in kind of hearing what some of your concerns were with it. But I mean, I guess I kind of look at Andor as kind of being like one of those characters where, almost like Mad Max, where the world's kind of just happening through him. Not so much. I mean, they put themselves in that position when they named the show after him. But like a lot of the other Star Wars shows that we've seen, that they just name after a character, there's a whole lot of other stuff going on, and maybe they would do better to name them something else than just title character. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. I guess we're gonna do another time jump before Tuesday's episode, so we'll see kind of how we just jump back in again.
Something you said, Ryan, is something that I'm considering now for the first time. If by the time they put these together in post-production, doesn't have to be like while they were on the set, if they knew that they were going to be released in 3-episode bundles, I think that's going to be a good thing. If they thought they were going to have, 3 to start and then the rest, the other 9 were going to be all weekly, like it was for season 1, that's going to probably be unfortunate. Having just finished Daredevil and covering that here on Geekscape, the show was not designed for them to have bundled it in some way. So I think we'll be able to assess that at the end of it. I hope that everyone was very conscious of it. I feel like the success of the first one earned Tony Gilroy the right that if he didn't like that idea, he could say, could you not do that? Could you not do 3-episode bundles? So
yeah, he's had such control over everything so far.
Yeah.
It's hard to expect that something like that would happen without him signing off on it, or like you said, that being the goal from the beginning.
Yeah, so let's talk about Andor himself, Cassian Andor. So in the first episode, we deal with something that I hadn't really considered, but it's very hard to fly a TIE fighter if no one has ever shown you how to do it. Now,
especially with whatever these controls were.
Well, yeah, these TIE fighters in particular. Now, Diallo, I know that you have focused quite a bit on the reboot, the 21st century Battlestar Galactica, but it did remind me of the original 70s version of stealing a Cylon fighter, and they're not really sure how to fly it. And I was like, well, yeah, because you're not programmed or you're not trained to do it. As kitschy as that is, I enjoyed it as a kid. So when something invokes that, it can be fun. And I thought it was very interesting. Obviously, some of it's played for comedy. When he revs it and then he just slams it into the back wall, and just sort of scraping the thing. And I thought it was interesting, but I didn't know that it warranted quite as much time as it did. So I was glad that he finally landed on that planet, and then we started to deal with that. I'll ask you first, Diallo. We're specifically talking about Andor's storyline with the TIE fighter. What did you think of spending some time with that? And just in case this is released for audio at any point, you should be able to hear Diallo shaking his head no.
Absolutely not. This sequence is actually sort of like it sums up a big issue that I had with the first season, which is and just like the first season too, it actually was in 3-episode arcs. They just didn't release them that way, but that's kind of how it was broken up. And I think this time they're just being more intentional about that. In a way, it sets your expectations a little bit more. But anyway, an issue that I had with Andor, my biggest issue with the first season was I liked the individual arcs enough. How they got from one arc to the next was an issue that I had, because it seemed like they took things so seriously and it was so grounded and the stakes seemed so high, except to get from the first arc to the second arc to the third arc, they engaged in a basically slapstick and kind of like awkward comedy to get you from one place to the next. And it was to me, it was like, it was very jarring. Especially I call it Space Cancun, when they pulled off that really excellent heist, and then he's on the planet, and then he just gets stopped by a random officer, and all of a sudden he's done all of these things. He was undercover. He's like, he flies the ship. Then he gets asked by this one officer, and he's like, he doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know what to do, and he's panicky and he's sweaty. And I'm like, is this the guy that just was in the last, like, what, 6 episodes, whatever, however many episodes, and it's just to be expedient, I think, to get him to the next part. And so I felt like it was really weak. And the prison episodes, similar, were done really well. I enjoyed when I was there, but then to get him to the next part, he's like getting like thrown up by fish. I forget exactly what happened. He's coming off the shore, and it was very, I don't know, it was very like kind of slapsticky again. So take me to this moment. It was sort of like I'm watching it, and I'm like, okay, he's the stakes are supposed to be really, really high. He's he's like super undercover in the belly of the beast. He's being sent in, I'm assuming, to get this TIE fighter. So I'm assuming he would have been trained for it. And then we find out a little bit later why he wasn't able to fly it, and it was a valid reason. But we needed to find that out in the moment and not 2 hours later.
Right. It definitely took a while. It was, if this was a novel, we would have had his internal monologue, and we would have known that. That I think was one of the best moments of his arc. If we can jump ahead to episode 3 for a second, he's like, okay, I can finally send this coded message. I'd like to know what the weather is. And then he gets this convoluted answer, and he's like, oh, God damn it. Look, this wasn't the ship I was supposed to fly. He's like, I can't speak in this coded speak right now. Everything is way too messed up. And I kind of appreciated the severity of the situation. But yeah, you're right. And I guess if you know that, well, you're just going to have to wait, whatever, 2 hours to see this. I guess they held that back. But it does, Ryan, it does make him look like, this guy learned how to fly a TIE fighter, but now he doesn't know how to fly it. I appreciate the decision to hold it back, but I agree with Diallo in that we would have understood. He could have said something to anyone. He could have said something to, all those, all the inhabitants of the planet he ends up on. But what did you think of this, Ryan? Did you think it was easier to fly any TIE fighter, any model, or?
Well, I'll give you this is just the way I thought about it, going all the way back to The Force Awakens, how people would kind of talk about the way Rey was able to fly the Millennium Falcon. Was I have to imagine that like ships in the Star Wars universe are equivalent to like cars that we have. So there's a lot of controls going on, but theoretically, if you know how to drive one, you could maybe, but every once in a while, if I was to go hop in a high-end Ferrari or a high-end Lamborghini that might have some sort of finicky switches to like engage the starter motor or make it do launch control or any other kind of thing, I might fiddle with it and kind of mess around and screw it up. There's videos online of rich people that buy a really expensive car and then they back it into their garage the first time they try to take it out. So I kind of think of it in that context, that like, theoretically, he's going in and he's probably thinking that he'll be able to figure out how to fly whatever this is. And to go back to that point, I think the way I kind of reconcile with that is just the lack of information that's probably this is a pretty lockdown point in the Empire's history. We're not quite to where we are around A New Hope, where it's, you're tightening so grass, your star systems are slipping through your fingers, or the hubris is not really set in where they're starting to let things slip. I mean, it's still pretty ruthlessly efficient for the Empire. So I have to imagine getting any information out for any kind of leak specs of some sort of proto TIE fighter would probably be pretty generic, but they might have just known there's some sort of prototype ship in a hangar and they want to steal it. He might not even known it was a TIE fighter. And then it has to go through all the rebel channels. And we saw that, as you mentioned in episode 3, how they have to speak in code and they can only send things. So like, it's like a terrible game of telephone trying to take what little information they have and get it through all these cells that aren't organized anyway to finally get to him in the belly of the beast, So who knows what, and I don't know if it's a choice to not give us any kind of information of what he was expecting, but clearly he did not know what he was getting into all the way, and then just kind of had to improvise, which I think is one of his better suits.
Yeah, there are definitely times, and this happened in season 1 as well, that you kind of see the level of the rebels, whatever, any aspect of the rebellion, and you're like, I don't know how they ever got their act together to getting those Death Star plans, let alone everything else, let alone knowing to like, okay, we have to move our base from Hoth before we all get killed. Yeah, it was just like, do they get anything right? But yes, I do. And to your point, this could be as simple as you get into a car and you've driven for 20 years and you're like, oh, this is a stick shift. I've heard of what a clutch is, but I don't actually know how to do it.
Or those ones that don't have even a stock shift anymore. It's all buttons now.
Oh, yeah. Right. But, the idea of if you don't know how to drive stick shift, it's like, well, if you figure out, if you grind the gears to get it into 5th, then just floor it, you're going to be fine. And that seems to be kind of what he did, after he reversed. So, I think that it was definitely played up for laughs, to Diallo's point. I did find the circumstances that he ends up in on the planet with, sort of what ends up being these this divided faction of separatists, rebels. I'm not quite sure exactly how they characterize them. I found that to be interesting. The idea that like, oh yeah, I was supposed to meet this guy here, and they're like, oh yeah, we killed that guy because we didn't trust him. I find that it can be interesting, when a fairly simple play, in the A team. George Papardo always says, I love it when a plan comes together. Sometimes it can be very interesting when a plan absolutely falls apart before it ever has a chance to come together. This plan did not come together, Diallo. Did you find the characters that he's interacting with, the sort of some very broad, specific characters? Did you enjoy that storyline, which stretched out over really most of these 3 episodes?
Yeah, not really. Like I said, to me, you could have cut Andor completely out of this first 3 episodes, and it would have played better. It would have been like, days of our Star Wars lives, and I would have enjoyed that a little bit more. I started to get nitpicky about it. That's when you've lost me. And it might not be fair to bring some of these things up, but I didn't like the way that the people were characterized, the language, their affect. It was too today, to in our world. But I kind of let that go. It's not the biggest deal, but things were starting to pile up for me. So I was just like, what about this? What about that?
Yeah, I found a little bit of that in season 1. I remember, and I didn't have a chance for a rewatch. And boy, if there was ever a show that I would have appreciated previously and on Andor before the start of the season, this is it. I was like, okay, we're just going in cold. But they definitely talked in a way that I wasn't used to them talking about it, the way that I'm used to them talking in Star Wars. I remember in season 1, Bix is talking about how she was out doing errands. And I'm like, no one has ever done errands in Star Wars before this. Why is she talking like this? And I didn't want it to bother me so much, but the show was so slow at that point. It really stood out, it definitely feels like there are definitely times where you don't necessarily think that of this as being Star Wars, and I think most of the other shows you do, but I think that that's entirely by design. But they did have a little bit of a modern sensibility. But did you feel anything like that, Ryan, as Andor figures out, like, I can definitely outsmart all of these guys. I just need to figure out when and where to outsmart them.
Yeah, it definitely seems like his whole demeanor from the very beginning is he's not super stressed about the situation. Like he's almost seems more annoyed by it and just kind of wanting, everybody to get their stuff together. I think what stuck out to me about that whole sequence was the way that they were quick cutting between it and the Imperial meeting that they were having about Gorman. And you have the lockdown, everybody seated down, they're all having hors d'oeuvres, everyone's taking their turn talking, everything's laid out, they got a foolproof plan. And then we're quick cutting to the grimy woods where these guys can't even decide, who's going to eat the moldy food. And they're just hollering back at each other. They're playing rock, paper, scissors. Like the contrast there between where the Empire is and where the early days of the rebellion is, I think is something the show just keeps hammering over to us, is kind of the sporadic, and this is something that we've seen in Rebels and other Star Wars properties as well, is until that moment when Mon Mothma comes over the radio and kind of denounces the Emperor, and like the rebellion officially kind of becomes a thing leading into Rogue One, when all these scattered cells kind of come together, is what we're seeing, I think, here. So I think it did go on maybe just a little bit too long, but I think they eventually got there. And I was interested in seeing how he was going to get out of it. And again, he just kind of was waiting for his moment. He knew that they were going to, drop the ball at some point. And to skip ahead, I love the reveal at the end of it all that they're on Yavin 4 this entire time. So the notion that this group of idiots is going to eventually found Yavin base, I think, is a nice little like picture of where we're going to get to.
It's a great point. I do agree with that. That it is fun when you get those, those sort of, callbacks, or I guess in this case, it's a call ahead. It's foreshadowing.
But that's it. That's where I had a problem, though. Like it was fun. Like it was fun to see it. Like that moment of recognition was fun for me. But again, they were so incompetent that if these people ended up being like a part of what established that, then it makes me not like, and I guess that's a problem I have with a lot of post original trilogy content, is that they cast everyone in an incompetent light. So they to have drama, so they make the Jedi incompetent in order for them to be overthrown, and in Andor they're making the rebellion seem incompetent instead of writing it differently so that I sort of like sympathize with their plight. And so I tossed that aside, though. I wasn't really making many assumptions. I actually was like, okay, these people are the ones that are responsible for like this base later. I don't have any respect for them, but I don't know what's going to happen. So it just was like a fun little Easter egg as far as I was concerned when I saw it. So
yeah, I think that the prequel trilogy, the series, and certainly the sequel trilogy definitely do have sometimes too much focus on what South Park refers to as member berries. And I say that because just this afternoon I saw episode 3 with my son, because it's in theaters for its 20th anniversary for just 1 week, and still in theaters through Wednesday. Anybody wants to check it out. And he'd never seen it before. So, and I probably hadn't seen it in like, I don't know, 18 years. And, it's like, oh yeah. So it's like, oh, look what, oh man, this is Senator Organa's ship. When you're going to see this again. And I'm like, yeah, okay. It's a lot of that. I love each individual thing, but sometimes you're like, you just tell a story, but I get it, because some of the stuff is so iconic, and obviously it resonates with a certain demographic, which I'm happily a part of. But I'm glad that they didn't, to Ryan's point, it was pretty quick. It was like, hey, look where we are. It wasn't, it wasn't like as big of a ta-da, like, look at this, so I guess that's fine.
I
But
think it's one
yeah,
of the rare ones in Andor too. There's not
yeah,
been a ton of that kind of wink
Mm-mm.
wink stuff in season 1, and I think to Gilroy's point, he had a purpose for putting it in there was to show, thematically where we're going. But
yeah.
he's largely stayed away from a lot of the kind of Easter egg stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that the ending of season 1, where we see the Death Star in production, was one of those rare ones. I agree. So we'll circle back with Andor when we have him reunited with the rest of his team. But speaking of reunited. Joining us now is the great Katie Hampton. Katie, thank you for rushing off set to be here with us.
That's exactly what happened. I'm excited to be here. This was incredible. What episode are we on right now?
So we're talking about them by storyline because of all
Nice.
three, and we were actually just starting to wind down talking about the Cassian Andor storyline, where he realizes that flying a TIE fighter isn't as easy as it looks.
Yeah.
That there's a reason that the white stormtroopers are not the ones flying them. They,
Yep.
they have the ones that are
The test
specific.
pilots.
And I know, and I know from the action figures there were TIE fighter pilots.
Yeah.
The grunts, you don't let them anywhere near your TIE fighter because they're going to do what Andor did. So before we move on, Katie, your thoughts sort of on him stealing this TIE fighter, and oh boy, this isn't the TIE fighter I thought it was, and then ending up being held hostage and waiting for the moment that he can outsmart a bunch of not particularly smart people.
I mean, I think we all know that the Empire is just chock full of people who are very consistently bad at their jobs. But I really enjoyed this. I feel like I saw a teaser of him trying to fly the TIE fighter, and then he backs up, and I feel like I saw a clip of that somewhere. I don't remember if that was like a teaser or something, but I was like, "Ooh, he's flying a TIE fighter."
Yeah.
So I wasn't necessarily surprised by that, but I loved the sequence, and like, how great was it to see him finally kind of get a handle of this? The only thing I could think about is honestly the woman who gave him the key to the TIE fighter. I was like, we're never gonna see her again.
Oh,
are we?"
she's dead. Yeah. She's definitely
She kind of knew it too. That was the
Yeah.
sad
Oh
part.
no, that was the saddest part about that. And like, what a nice tribute that they gave to her to be able to be like, hey, this is gonna be worth it, right? Like, I'm sacrificing my life here because this is bullshit.
I think we also got a little bit of a peek at like Cassian as the leader. I think one of the quotes that's in the trailer for the series was Luthen telling him he needs to start thinking like a leader. And I think in this moment we see a little bit of that as he's kind of like encouraging her that it's going to be okay, and if something bad does happen, it's happening for a reason.
Yeah.
So we're getting a little bit of tease of like what he can become as a leader in the rebellion.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, now that we're talking about that, I would have much rather had seen her like tragically die than to see
Damn, that got
buffoonery.
dark.
to see the buffoonery of him trying to figure out how to fly a TIE
That is-
fighter. He should have been trained on. If this was an important mission, you don't go in not knowing what you're doing. It's a big issue for me.
That's the
That's a good
rebellion,
point.
man.
That is a good point. No, and like,
No,
I mean,
I don't-
even
it-
her just asking, like, this is going to be worth it, right? Like, and him kind of being like, yeah, sure, and then
Yeah.
hearing her, no, you're totally right. But
like
that's-
he was embedded there, she was all secretive, so it wasn't just like he would have had to like he had the uniform, they would have had to like get rid of a lot would have had to have happened for him to get there. So it wasn't like he
Yeah.
just showed up one day. It's like, hey, I'm a pilot, So then with all of that to happen, I would assume then that he would at least be able to competently fly a TIE fighter. Again, they explain two episodes later why he wasn't. I think it's a valid reason, but I feel like they could have played that differently in that moment. Let us know, which is a problem with the first two episodes. It's like, again, like with his storyline anyways, it's like I don't know what he's necessarily doing on the planet with those people, and I assume we're going to find out specifically later what the deal was, but they're making you wait 3 hours, 4 hours to get like a little what a little line of dialogue will help us
Right.
with.
They're making us wait an entire Zack Snyder special edition. I know what you're saying. And there's no amount of time that that could possibly seem longer than that. Do you have any final thoughts on Cassian? We'll talk about, when he reunites with family in a little bit, but sort of up until that point, we were talking about earlier that I did like how he's so frustrated and he's in a bit of a panic that he has to stop speaking in his carefully coded, I want to know what the weather forecast is. He's like, well, no, God damn it, you gave me the wrong ship, and this isn't what you taught. What Diallo's saying, the final payoff of like, no, I had a hard time because you didn't tell me it was this ship. I appreciate that.
It's also showing how messy this rebellion is starting out to be. I mean, like they don't know what they're doing. They're fighting an entire corporation, if you will. It's a whole streamline of things that they don't know much about. They just know they need to stop it somehow, and they're on the ground level of all of this. So
one of the things sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, one of the things I like about Andor, the character, is the improvisation. I actually really like that. What I'm saying is I don't like those scenes could be written differently. Like in the first movie, the improvisation was, I have to show that I'll do anything, even if it's dark and dirty, and that he does that for most of the movie in Rogue One, right? Like he's ready to kill what's her name, is it Jalen Urso?
Jyn Erso.
Jyn Erso, yeah, he's ready. Yeah. So like I like that part of him and how he's able to like. It's just that I feel like they're played for laughs, and he comes across as incompetent rather than, it's one thing if you come in prepared and things don't go the way you want. Like James Bond does that all the time, right? Like he goes into a situation, he's trained, but things aren't going to. But I never think James Bond's incompetent. So that's all. I'm not also not saying I think Andor should be like a super spy and like swap. I'm not saying that either.
Yeah,
but it's more
that's
the
what
situations.
I kind of like about him, especially like not really knowing how to be in the Empire.
Yeah, like I like that about him. It's just the situations. I think it's not him. So that's all I'm saying.
What were we gonna say, Ryan?
I was gonna say even in Rogue One, he's not at that level yet. So if we're 3 or 4 years even before then, he's just now starting to get used by Luthen in kind of these roles. So he's still developing into that kind of leader that we're going to see by the time we get to Rogue One.
Yeah, well, speaking of someone who evolves as a leader, this seems like a good point to jump on over to Mon Mothma, who I think is, a character that I think obviously we got to sort of revisit her in the prequels, but this show really shone a light on her as did Rogue One. But I thought that in terms of storylines that didn't move very quickly, this would be one, but they set up the fact that this is sort of like the style. This is a multi-day event. And, I was saying before you popped in, Katie, that this was a show where I really needed that recap on season 1 when season 2 started.
Same.
So I'm glad at least we got it in context. And then as the episodes went along, they did flash back to last season of like, yeah, sure. It's like an almost arranged marriage, but not quite, but you kind of have to marry each other.
Her daughter is a
bitch. Well, you're allowed to say that.
Her daughter is a bitch.
Yeah, well,
I completely forgot about her too until like this whole event was coming, and I was just like, oh God, this girl again. And like, I understand she's, a teenage girl. We were all like that. I get it. But boy, does she play that well.
Yeah, it's almost like she's too young to be getting married. I don't want to, judge other cultures, especially fictional cultures that don't actually exist. But it's almost like she's too young to be getting married. And just talking about how her husband to be wouldn't hold her hand, and he's like, he's a child. Well, yes. He is. That's the point. And I thought that was a great interaction with Mon Mothma to jump to that, where she's like, I'm going to say what I wish my mom had said. And then she says it, that like, you don't have to get married. She's like, yeah, I wish you were drunk.
Dude. Oh, I just want to slap that little face. That actress is very good, by the way. She makes me hate her every single second she's on screen, but I'm sure she's a lovely person. Mon Mothma.
Are you sure? Because I'm not.
I don't know. I mean, sometimes people are really good at
That's
playing
true.
evil people for being evil, like so putting that out there. But Mon Mothma's speech to her, like you were saying, Christian, it was such a cool moment, like such a hero moment for her to be like, hey, you don't have to do this. Like, I don't care about, all the pomp and circumstance or anything like that. If you yourself don't want to do this, you don't have to. And what a beautiful thing from a mother on the wedding day of a daughter that honestly, if it was actually love, then that would be a totally different story and that would be a terrible speech. But I mean, it's an arranged marriage, and in a very, I believe that Ivan Soto is pointing out Chandrila is a very cult planet. Very true. Absolutely, dude. No, it's so true. But it's like, she's saying, I, as the mother, the woman who's like raised you, am allowing you to throw all of that away for what you want.
Right.
And I mean, obviously that's something that our society really appreciates and values, and this one does not, because she just turns a little bitchy ass on her and she's like, no, I wish you were drunk. And then I was like, I wish you would be now, after what she just said. And then she proceeds to get tanked. And I was like,
I was going to say, yeah, she makes up for it. And
you know what? And
up.
I honestly, I'm like, good for you, girl. Like, have one night.
It's true. We don't necessarily get a lot of sequence. Like, we although I was going to say we never got to see, Princess Leia tie one on. We sure had the sense that Carrie Fisher had no problem with
She
that.
had no problem.
Yeah. But, in universe, in continuity, well, there's a lot of things attendant to this storyline, but I want to sort of focus on the drawn out process of the wedding and sort of the little bit of the parallel for this rebellion that she's doing her best to help prop up. Diallo, did you wish that we had dealt with place cards and seating charts? Did you think we should have gotten more planning for the wedding, or do you think
I don't like your tone. I don't like.
Well, what I'm trying to say is I think we maybe had too much. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, again, like I said before, like if you cut Andor out of the show, I actually like most the rest of it. And if I watch it from a space, if I watch it from a space of it just being like a drama where there's no like endpoint or journey that we need to get to, it's like watching almost any other drama that I watch, like This Is Us or something, where it's like a character journey, right? So I actually really enjoyed much of the sequence, even though like I was experiencing a sense of I don't know what's going on because we're cutting away to Andor and everything else, but just this scene, these scenes themselves were I from a character standpoint, I really liked them. How conflicted she was, the different intersections, that the different relationships she had with different people and how she had to act. I enjoyed all of that stuff. And I think the thing that I do like about the show Andor, I have to specify not Andor himself, but the show Andor is I do enjoy watching other like aspects of culture that are kind of like getting filled in. And so even though the dance scene was giving me raves, Zion raves from Matrix Reloaded, even though I was having flashbacks, I still appreciated the sequence because I just thought it just kind of it's coloring in the world and making it feel more real, whereas before everything's been kind of on the surface. So I actually did enjoy this storyline. And Mon Mothma is my like that's my girl. Like I just think she's if we could go back, if I could go back in time and like have them redo Star Wars, the two things I would do, I would make George Lucas make it Leia's arc, because I think it would work better if it was like Leia's arc, but Mon Mothma would be there from the start and she would be kind of central to it. Like she's a great character, but this actress, I just love her whenever she's on screen.
Genevieve Riley, yeah, she and obviously they certainly could have recast her from the prequels for this show if they wanted to, but there was also no reason to. So I do like when we get that consistency. Ryan, I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on the wedding planning, but we'll sort of go reverse. I want you to actually transition the conversation into, the fact that Lucian's there. And, Katie referred to the fact that Mon Mothma's daughter's a bitch. Well, she gets it from dad, and like 100%. It's all from him, so sort of everything that's going on, the fact that she's got this big day, it's a lot of pressure, but also the rebellion might be starting to unravel and people are starting to talk who shouldn't. So your thoughts on really all of it, Ryan?
Yeah, the best way I can think of is she's spinning plates, and most mothers on their daughter's wedding, like that is enough to completely cause a psychological break. So you add on top of that, her finding out that, her slush fund for the rebellion is almost compromised. Luthen shows up on the scene and she knows that that's probably never a good idea. Who knows what the heck's going to happen there? And everything else that's going on, I think with one way that, again, the show does a lot of stuff of trying to like show things without saying it. And what they did a lot with this was the cutting between other characters that were trapped or in trouble. So we would see, Andor in trapped, or we would cut to Brasso and Bix, trying to lay low, and they're entrapped. And then we cut to Mon Mothma, who's at this extravagant wedding. They're all drinking. They're like looking at 1,000-year-old sculptures that have been reclaimed, and it's this huge thing that should be this celebratory moment of luxury and rich. And she's just as trapped, just as dangerous as all those other characters, but it's completely different. So I think that's what stuck out to me, was just how, her environment looks completely different than everybody else's, but she's no less in danger, and the walls are closing in on her pretty quickly too. And I think that's why Luthen shows up, because he tells her, you have to be protected. This only works if you stay squeaky clean. What do we need to do to keep that image up? Because if she gets found out that she's funding these people, the game's up. So a very stressful weekend for her, I would say.
Yeah, no shit.
And by the way, it's a great point, Ryan, sort of the contrast for sort of the peril she's in. She is not sticking her head out to lap up drops of rainwater from a tarp, but metaphorically she kind of is, in terms of like, I'm having a lot of trouble keeping my head above water, I guess, to overextend the metaphor. And we sort of see, I think that when everything was put in place in season 1, it was like, this doesn't really seem like this is going to end well. It was very tenuous then, and we jump ahead a whole year and we're like, it's like this close to unraveling. And unfortunately, Lucian's going to have to TCB, as it said on Elvis's jet. He is going to have to take care of business, but she does need to stay above the fray. What did you think, Diallo, sort of watching, the fact that somebody's got to pay for a rebellion? Rebellion's not free, unfortunately, Diallo.
Yeah, like I said, I dug that stuff. That stuff is the stuff that makes sense to me, actually. Like,
by the way, let me just bring in this quote from Ivan Soto. Luthen telling Mon Mothma, "How nice for you." That is actually very nice. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, there's a lot of great moments. I mean, there's a lot of just tremendous one-liners that you can't quote from the show, because it's like, well, somebody hasn't seen it, they're not going to appreciate why it's so great. But just wanted to sort of bring that in. But it is kind of interesting, because it's a part of this rebellion that we didn't see before season 1 of the series. It was just left to our imaginations. How it's like, yeah, they sure have a lot of weapons and a lot of people, and they have informants, and the Death Star plans weren't free. Things like that. Diallo.
Yeah, again, this is the part of the show that I enjoy, even from season 1. It's just like, I've always, and it really came to me like in Rogue One, just really getting it was always there in the original trilogy, but just how patchwork the fleets were, different types of ships, and how they, and I was a kid when I first watched it, so I wasn't really thinking about what that would even mean. But now, like, kind of thinking about it now, like the intrigue, the secrecy, how that would actually look in our world. You're a part of like a country, and then you decide you want to break free, and how do you? So that all that stuff is interesting to me too, and you have to pay for it. And so that was like a great dilemma that they introduced in the first season, and I like watching how they're dealing with moving through that. So yeah, I have a 10 out of 10. No
notes.
No notes.
Who knew that the Y-wing was the Toyota Tundra of the galaxy?
well, yeah, it's it's the
just insurgencies all over,
Yeah.
strapping guns to the top of it.
Katie, as we are about to move away from that aspect of it, what did you think as we kind of watched all of this happening at the same time? Ryan used the example of the plate spinners, which is pretty perfect metaphor for what is going on with her, and that is why she got so absolutely shit-faced at the end of it.
Yeah. I mean, she's sending this guy off to die now, and she knows that full well. And she's like, I didn't think we would have to touch this side of things. And it's like, it's a freaking rebellion, girl. You're going to have to get used to this because people are going to die. And, oh, man, I forgot how great the political side of this show is. And just mwah, mwah, mwah. Like, I'm just like, it's because when you watch the original movies, like, you're excited about the rebellion, you're like, yeah, fight the bad guys, whatever. And then it's like, now we're adults and watching these, and we're like, yeah, this money had to come from somewhere, and they're gonna have to do some shady shit in order to get it. But it's also like, it's so interesting to see that this whole rebellion it just feels a little too close to home sometimes.
Right.
Sometimes.
And it's like, it's one of those shows that like after each episode, I just kind of have to like, who saw it away? Because it's just like, oh God, this is too real. I love the fact that Creepo McGee comes back and he's asking like, I don't think I can funnel this money because of this like rebellion nonsense. And I'm getting to be best buddies with this empire worshiping type guy. And it's just like, oh God, it's so good. And it's just like, yeah, that dude's got to die now. And I kind of like that they're finally taking care of business with that.
Right.
Everyone's part of the resistance until the money dries up.
Right.
As soon as it started hitting his pocketbook, he was like, yeah, maybe this empire thing's not so bad.
Yeah.
You might not like
I really like how like she is like she's funding it, so it signals to you that she's like committed to something. Like it's not just like this thing that's just kind of happening.
Direct opposition to her family, her immediate family, her husband, which clearly that was arranged as well, and then her daughter, who's just but it's just like I'm sure every single one of us has felt ousted in some way or another, but when it's your family and you're like not just the black sheep, but the black sheep that's like, hey, but things could be really great for all people. Maybe we go with that side of things. Maybe that's the way that people should live. And maybe we got to kill a couple people.
Well, I agree that this show does a great job portraying the inner workings and the politics, everything behind the things that I was saying this when we started, the things that should be boring. And maybe, the first time a storyline starts, it might feel a little boring, but then we do move along to other things that we just get. And I mean,
Our
this
favorite fascist couple
the
here.
the,
This
the
is
fact that this Cyril character isn't long dead, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And
This is by far the funniest storyline.
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this was this was the A story on the Love Boat version of this show. I mean, it's like we're gonna meet mom, and I do love the way that she tough talks the mom, and like, here's how it's gonna go. You're gonna stop being you, and it's probably also something that maybe a lot of people can relate to. The mother or mother-in-law, sort of that dynamic that sometimes we may have witnessed up close, maybe from afar, but the contrast of that to just her in the meeting, and Krennic, who obviously always great to see, is just so aware of, like, all right, well, what are you thinking? You already have an idea, you're just not saying it. And it's almost like, why aren't you saying it? Because the Empire's still the old boys club, but he at least has the sense of, like, I want to know what you're thinking. You're here for a reason. And I thought that her storyline through these 3 episodes, I thought was very interesting. This part, at home with Cyril, this was very silly. But I enjoyed it. I'm not saying that. It's like Diallo saying, it's like, no, the character stuff's all good. I'm enjoying the Cassian Andor part, but I do understand what you're saying. The other characters are all so rich, and there's so much going on that they are watchable in and of themselves. If this somehow was an entire episode, her dealing with the Empire, and then she comes home, and then she has this, and whatever's about to happen with her character, it would have all been fine.
There's a good sitcom in there somewhere.
There's a great sitcom in here.
Yeah. I think it already has been. I mean, like, who I can't remember the freaking, but it just feels like an actual episode of a specific comedy that I cannot think right now. I'm sorry.
Well, you know what? Let's just say it was according to Jim and move on.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
This was the according to Jim episode of Andor, and I don't know. It seems like everybody at least enjoyed that. And look, there's times where things don't feel particularly Star Warsy, like I was saying earlier, but that's all right. You feel like some things are just universal, no pun intended. Katie, your thoughts on sort of both facets? We're talking about Deirdre at home and at work.
I am fascinated by her character and her character's story arc, because it's interesting to see a woman who is striving for power and is smart deep within the ranks of the Empire of, like, some really dumbass idiots. Like, we've seen so many inefficiencies, and how great her mind works within this. It's like she could be mentally as scary as any of the top, like, Siths or something.
Yeah, no, in the contrast to the guys that are clearly only there for the hors d'oeuvres. You know what I mean? It's
it's what makes her a good villain,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right, exactly. The thoughtfulness, the meticulous nature of said villainy. Diallo, I want to know what you thought of at home with Deirdre and Cyril, but also at the office.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. It's funny, you were saying, like, you wish there was a previously or whatever for the first season. I was a little surprised when I started the first episode that they didn't seem like they had a really strong recap specifically made for, like, the like, not attached to, like, previously on, but just like a complete recap of the first season that Disney provided for us. And I didn't like the first season enough to go back and just watch the last episode. I have to do that for a lot of shows, just because sometimes it's like I haven't seen the last one in 2 or 3 years. The last episode, between seasons. And but anyway, so I really kind of didn't remember, like, what was going on. I was like, wait, okay, I remember that guy. He looks different than, like, the first season. I can't remember exactly what how he ended up where he did, and I kind of remembered her. And I didn't know what was going on now. So and the bad part was I just wasn't motivated enough to find out. So it was just kind of happening, and I was just trusting in time I'm gonna understand what this is all about. The show wasn't it wasn't hinging on this, so I didn't have any sense of like impatience about it either. It just was kind of happening, and I figured maybe in the next 2 episodes they'll get to why I need to really care. So
Right, yeah, no, I think there's an element to this that feels like sort of the later seasons of Lost when they flash sideways, and I'm like, huh, what now? Wasn't this guy a huge creep? I don't remember any of this. Ryan, before we move on from Deirdre, your thoughts here as to watching this and the mom coming over, who I remember very well from season 1. I didn't need a recap on that. As soon as I saw her, I'm like, oh boy, yeah.
Is she Eartha Kitt?
She wishes she was
that
Eartha
voice.
Kitt.
That voice is so yeah. I neglected to mention this earlier when I was talking about the quick cutting between all the characters that were in tense, moments, and I left poor Deidre out of that, so I should include her. That's meeting that mom for the first time. That's about as tense as anything else anyone else was dealing with. But yeah, and it didn't take up too much time. And Diallo, to what you were saying, last season really didn't lead us to believe that there was going to be a romantic relationship between the two.
Nope.
We'd seen that Cyril was like enamored with her mind and how she was trying to uncover the rebellion the same way that he was kind to, and there was like a somewhat synergy there, and I thought maybe they could do something down the line with the two of them, but they just went right into it. I mean, we skipped a year, so the assumption would be that throughout that year that I guess they started a relationship. But yeah, going back, a recap wouldn't have helped us, I think, really there much, because there wasn't a lot of hints there. But
you talking right now is actually filling in the gaps for me, and I'm starting to
there wasn't too much.
Honestly, like that's something I completely forgot that I was like, I didn't realize they were. Oh, this is weird. But okay.
Every day in that year that we jumped ahead, he got a little bit less creepy. So he's 365 times less creepy than he was when we left.
I mean, taking a year to meet mom it's pretty. They're moving pretty slow, I would say. But
depends on the mom. But I concur with your point.
Yeah. To Ivan's point, though, about Cyril laying on the bed, I saw an interview with the two of them. I can't remember what website it was for, but apparently that wasn't in the script. They just captured that moment of him. That was
actually very funny. Yeah,
and that was hilarious. And
that's amazing.
People are pretty excited to have a new Star Wars meme that we can use.
Ivan just went to something that. Do you think they kiss on the mouth? No. I don't want to think about it. I'm sorry. It
feels like the most platonic, very deep relationship I've ever seen.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I think it's even in the comedic moments, though, it says a lot about where they are. I mean, because in season 1, Deidre was very like the whole middle management in the Empire seems to be an ongoing thing in the series of everybody trying to constantly grab for power and take as many promotions as they can. Yeah. And she's almost thinking about not wanting to take the Gorman position because of this little life that she's built out. We see her like practicing in the mirror how to smile because like she's an Imperial and they don't even know how to smile. So even in those comedic moments, like there's a lot said about where she is as a character right now.
Well, I don't want to see her with her hair down ever again because that was very jarring. I think that, I like the Imperial side of her being what we focus on. Katie, I know you've had a long day, so I want to start with you as we talk about I would say the most shocking aspect of this show, and I there was a chance you weren't going to be able to be with us. So I've seen your video where you talk about this. So yes. I'm being a lawyer where don't ask a question you don't know the answer to. I know the answer. I want to get your thoughts. You can talk as much about Bix from these 3 episodes, the whole situation there. But I want to give you a chance to start off the conversation on this aspect of the show, which, of course, was episode 3.
Oh my God. Okay. So Bix is the character that I was like, I didn't quite really remember her, like what she was about.
She was the one who was going on errands in season 1. And the fact that somebody in Star Wars ran errands drove me crazy. But
it was, it's like one of those that like, I had to watch like a different recap in order to recap what had happened in the first season. And we even like searched for a couple. Because it was also like, wait, what happened again? Because there were so many things going on. And Bix was definitely one of them. But what an amazing episode to bring this into the freaking Disney universe of Star Wars that has been kind of goofy and whatnot. Like, this is one of those series that really touches ground with how realistic a rebellion is. And, like, again, to the point where it's a little uncomfortable. But the fact that Disney allowed them, much like they did within Daredevil, to go and cross that line into a rapé scene, as we like to call it in this household. And for, YouTube not trying to cover up what you're trying to say. But with a rapé scene is an insane thing to attempt for Star Wars.
And to say the word.
Yeah.
For her to just say the word in a Star Wars, I thought was pretty crazy.
That's the part that's so brilliant. They let her say it. They let her call it out and label it. That's the thing I didn't see coming, because my husband had heard that, like, there was a scene in the 3rd episode that was a pretty heavy scene. And I was like, okay, well, I'm mentally prepared for that on a Disney level. And I thought that was very well done. I thought it was very Disney in its effect, where, it's a fight scene. And what a great fight scene, because it could be interpreted one way or another. Like, oh, they just got into a weird tussle. No, she calls it a rape. And what a great thing to bring to this, because, okay, Christian, you saw my video.
I did.
Remind me the name of the director. Because I didn't look it up before I came on here.
You're talking about Tony Gilroy?
Tony Gilroy.
He's the creator.
The writer,
the creator.
Sorry.
Not the director. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The fact that Tony Gilroy said that it was very intentional to have this within Star Wars, because when you're fighting against this kind of a regime, it feels like rape. And I was like, that's what makes the politics of this fucking show so great. And she does such a wonderful job of trying to reason with this dude out, like, after she essentially kills him, but he kind of stumbles and hits his own head. Oh my God, that was so great. I was like, yeah, suck it. Because this is also the look of this actor, the commitment of this actor, without making it over the top goofy, without making it kind of Star Warsy, like making it very real and very creepy, and like so well done in his performance that it reminds me of a Groundling sketch that is incredible. It's called Typecast Actor, I think. If you have the time, please look it up. It's a phenomenal sketch. But essentially the sketch is an actor comes into his agent and says, I'm always getting cast as the rapist. I don't want to do this anymore. And he's like, this is just, I don't like playing these characters. This feels weird. I can't go on dates anymore. And then he gets like called in to do a sexual assault scene with a very famous actress. And then he's just like, oh, I don't know. But he's like, but it's this person. Very funny, and it's very lighthearted. And I understand this is not a topic that is often presented in a lighthearted way, but Star Wars is such an interesting avenue, at least for Disney, to allow this to happen, because that is the kind of stuff that gets censored in Disney all of the time. So deeper storylines that have deeper meanings, especially during a time like this when certain rights for women are not being upheld. Just putting that out there as someone who's very concerned that her passport has not been returned from the passport office in Texas. Just saying, there are many things about this show that are hitting close to home, but in a way that is part of the entire universe, like something that is universal within Star Wars, as big of a topic as sexual assault, or SA for those who are reading transcription.
Yeah, I was gonna say for YouTube we can refer to it as SA, but also I don't know how heavily monetized this show is, so I think we're fine.
We'll find out.
That's usually what happens. Yeah, but to all those points, I think that obviously saying, what we're all saying earlier is that we're seeing aspects of what it means for there to be a rebellion. We're also seeing what it means for there to be an empire. And to your point about the actor who plays this Imperial officer, he will be remembered in exactly the same way as the guy who breaks into Archie and Edith Bunker's house and attempts to rape Edith Bunker, and the studio audience growled at him. They were so angry, and so yeah,
it should elicit that response. It should.
Well, no, exactly.
From a good actor.
And I think that it is a topic that doesn't get talked about in a way that it competently can. I knew you had a busy day today, but I said, could you please come on because I need to talk about it. Because and it has nothing to do with Diallo or Ryan. It's just me. I'm like, I want to make sure that we at least look at this in a way that a woman would look at this. And
appreciate that. I really do. I think that's one of the reasons why I was like, I have to come on.
Well, yeah, because if this was next week, who knows? You know what? Maybe you really need to come on next week. But anyway.
Well, then they have the actual Matrix orgy, and then the party just pops off, and Mon Mothma pops off too.
So, we will, of course, continue the conversation on that. Before I let you go, because I know it's been such a long day, is there anything else you want to say about this storyline or anything else from these 3 episodes, Katie?
It gave me more attention to the character, and she was phenomenal in this performance as well. And her absolute rage and complete shock of like how the events unfold thereafter is so well done that I'm hoping that they at least address some kind of like, hey, let's talk about this. How you doing? But that might also jump a year, and so I'm sure that storyline will no longer be addressed.
Well,
but maybe it will.
That storyline stumbled out and hit his head and ended up dead. So it's that guy's not around anymore. And credit to the actress is her name is Adria Arjona, Adria Arjona.
She's rumored to be the next Wonder Woman, right?
That would be phenomenal. I didn't hear that rumor, but and look at that. See, I could have just brought up this comment from Ivan Soto, and
I thought you just pulled it from that. I thought
No. I had Googled it earlier, and I was ready because I'm like, I got to try and say it. But thank you, Ivan. Appreciate it. Yeah. So yes, well, Katie, we'll continue talking about this, and we're gonna do, I guess, 4 of these. So I do hope that we see you again at some point during the course of this season. Take a quick moment and let everybody know where else you can be found here on the Geekscape Network or anywhere else.
Oh gosh, you could probably find me pretty much anywhere on Geekscape. Thursday nights on Internet Supreme Court, we judge memes, and it's very stupid. We have a lot of dumb bits, especially Sean's beans. Get your Sean Bean beans. But we also have Christian Cringe that comes out every Sundays. We talk about cringy things that happened within the cult of Christianity for white people in the late 90s, early 2000s. And
as the name implies, it's not just watching cringy shows that I've done throughout my career, so I appreciate that.
There are many cringy shows, but we've also discovered some really incredible music, so I please check it out. It's been a really fun time, and we've been getting a lot of really great feedback on that one. Napping Through Happy Hour comes out every Mondays. It is a podcast that I do with my good friend Marie. She is wonderful, hysterical, and I just spent a weekend a little bit earlier this weekend with her. She came down to LA, and it was phenomenal time. And we'll be talking a lot about that and the Beetle House. Check that out. I'm everywhere. I'm El Sassy Pants. I'm sorry. I gotta go to bed.
You gotta go.
I really appreciate Diallo and Ryan. Really great to meet you guys.
Katie, before you go, have you guys reviewed McGee and Me on Christian Cringe yet?
We have done one episode. Wait, did we do an episode? I think we did one episode, but you come on, talk to Matt. Matt will love. I think he's been talking about McGee and Me for ages.
You need to do the Storm episode. It's got to be the Storm episode.
McGee and Me.
That's the
McGee and Me. That was
all the All the millennial Christian kids are knowing that one right now. So,
dude, okay, yeah, Extreme Days is one of the ones that we covered, and that was a fun one.
All right,
right.
Katie, thank you so
You ever
much.
talk about A Thief in the Night? You ever seen that one?
Diallo, come on for A Thief in the Night. Come on for it. I'll email Matt at some point in life when I rewatch this. Thank you guys.
Right.
Have a
Good
great
night.
Thanks, Katie.
Well, I appreciate getting her insight, and I knew that it had been a very long day, so I wanted to start with her. One of the things that I thought would be interesting about talking about this with you, Diallo, because as I referenced earlier, you went very in depth on the reboot of Battlestar Galactica, and I do remember a very jarring incident where one of the boomers, I don't know if it was our main one, I can't remember that well, but there is an attempted rape on that show, and I feel like the tone of that show, it was still jarring, but I'm like, oh, I kind of feel like this is a much dirtier universe, and dirty in the sense of, you know, just really like, you know, low level people basically like that is what I mean, the attacker. And I think that I tend to not think of Star Wars like this, even after season 1, even through the first 2 episodes of Andor. And I think Katie's reaction is like, okay, that is important to know, because to me, I was just like, oh man, I didn't think that word existed in Star Wars, but of course it does when you have fascism taking over it's already taken over the universe. You know, this is where it started to crumble, you know. So I find it to be a very uncomfortable topic to watch, but also talk about right now. And I think that's exactly the point. And that's what Tony Gilroy is going for. And I was glad Katie was aware of that comment that he made, that is basically a parallel for fascism. But I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on, you know, her storyline, Bix's storyline, building to that point. I mean, we see the guy the first time, that's enough to go like, oh, okay, we got to get out of here. But then he comes back, and, you know, I think that her first choice wouldn't be, I got to kill this guy so he shuts up. No, so you put her in the kind of peril where like anything she can do to stop him, and it ends up with him dead. So whatever you're thinking about any of this, let us know, Diallo.
Yeah, it's sort of like, as a man, I am glad Katie actually spoke to it, because I don't feel like I'm in the place, like I'll talk about almost anything else. I have a racial comment to make a little bit later, but there's like, in this particular instance, there's nothing I can say that I feel like can be definitive, or it should have been this, it should have been that. It's a scene that happened. I have some comments on kind of how, like, I remember after it was over and she kind of pleaded to the other guard outside, I felt it was more of like she was pleading to us, the audience, rather than him, because he's a part of that faction. So I'm assuming that's in all of them. That was the point. So but I was a little nitpick for me for that, but the rest of it, I don't know. I felt a little uncomfortable having it happen, but I'm not the authority, and I'm not going to even pretend to be in this instance for talking about that.
No, and I think it's used in a specific way, and, you know, I use the example from Battlestar Galactica because that is also attempted. There is a brutal rape scene in The Sopranos. Dr. Belfi is raped in a stairwell, and I think that I don't know how I would have felt had we had a scene like that. So I think that the way it was used as a tool in this to sort of get to the end of like, well, she's going to kill this guy and they got to run. You know, I appreciate artists, creators telling stories that they feel like are the stories they want to tell, and it certainly went a lot further and were dealing with things that I didn't expect from Disney Plus. So as Katie said,
Yeah.
kudos to them for really tackling things that I would never have expected. When they bought Star
Yeah.
Wars, this was not the thing that I'm like, well, at some point there's going to be a Rey storyline.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting, and it is kind of why I don't necessarily want to like speak to like what I think it should have been or anything, because
Sure.
I think my perspective as a man influences it in a way that I don't think is like I just don't have an authority to talk about it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
like for instance, like that in Battlestar Galactica, it was played in a way where I felt it was like organic and appropriate to the setting and the situation to cast these people as a villain.
Yeah.
The people on the Pegasus, right? So I felt like, and just the way the whole scene, and it still makes me uncomfortable. But I didn't think it was necessarily played in the same manner. It felt a little bit coming out of left field a little bit for me here.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm saying I don't want to say it should have been done one way or another, because obviously it's a thing that happens in lots of different forms. And so I'm not going to be like, hey, they should have done it. You know what I mean? I'm just not,
Yeah.
I'm not the person to be able to say how it should have been done.
No, and it really is a topic, an incident, that, look, I have never done a rewatch on Battlestar Galactica. I would love to have the time to do it, but I've thought of that. That stayed with me, and
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of those, my mom lives back east, but it was a show we watched, and she had a really big problem with that happening. And and so I remember, and that's, I don't know, 15 years ago, maybe 20, not quite 20, but probably 15 years ago. So, I feel like similarly, this will stay with me. And I think that's exactly what the intent was. And, the fact that I was very uncomfortable with it is, I think, exactly the point. Ryan, not to put you in the hot seat now that we've all had this, but just in general, whatever thoughts you might have about, Bix's arc really kind of culminating in that moment.
Yeah, I think one thing I appreciate is Tony Gilroy himself is very much like a student of history.
Sure.
Reads up a lot on world history, and his comments directly after the episode aired that kind of gave more context to the decision, I think really helped kind of ease everyone's mind about it, or just kind of contextualize it better. The idea being that as long as power dynamics have existed within human history, this has been a byproduct of that. And to imply that the Empire would somehow be above it is, not something that I think that we could, think away. But just taking a broader step back, what I do think it does is it helps give a kind of evil face to the Empire. I think there has been a lot of that in Star Wars, other than blowing up Alderaan in Episode 4. We don't see them do a lot of like evil things, and I think it's.
Well, I mean, Anakin did slaughter a temple full of children. I watched that this
yeah. Separating like the Sith from the Empire, though. I think
sure.
Like
the Empire, as in the
government apparatus controlling of the Empire, as opposed to like the controlling Sith that we know. So like to see that, and I did done it in other ways too. I think one thing the Bad Batch did really well was to show kind of how ruthless and evil that the Empire could be in those early days. So to give us more of like reason of why this rebellion is festering and why there is the need for it is important, other than just starting a New Hope and saying good guys, bad guys, rebels and Empire, look at them go. I think it helps really drive that point home that these are evil people doing heinous things to marginalized groups. And that's why this rebellion is not only they may be dispersed and clumsy, but they're reacting to a need and out of necessity to the the power dynamics that are happening. So I think it definitely helps push that forward and kind of bring that to light. And I think in Tony Gilroy's hands, I think he was trusted to kind of handle it the way he did.
Yeah, and I think that, that one scene really is what all three of these episodes for their storyline was really like showing, just not as blatantly and forcefully. But yes, metaphorically, this is exactly what the Empire does. They come to a planet and they take whatever they want, and there are usually no repercussions for that Imperial officer. There was the ultimate repercussion, and to the point when Bix is pleading with the guy who's basically the driver, it's almost like this guy's a human. Like on some level, maybe I have a chance. I don't want this to get worse than it is. But there was no really coming back because this guy's also, a member of the Empire.
Yeah, I
So
thought that was an interesting element too, that they never really gave that Imperial officer a direct name. And I think part of that is because the more you do that, then he becomes just the bad fish or the bad apple.
sure, yeah,
Not giving him a name implies that this is happening across every system. In the Empire, this isn't just an isolated incident. That this is happening probably in mass with the Empire, especially in these fringe outer rim worlds. So I think that was a deliberate effort to not give him a name and give him, something that you could just say, oh, he was just a bad one. The rest of them weren't that bad, kind of thing.
right, yeah. I agree with that. So Diallo, Cassian Andor basically shows up. She's able to fend for herself and resolve that situation, but he ultimately does come to the rescue, and then they fly back off in this TIE fighter into episode 4. What did you think about sort of this, like, no, you can't go there. Oh yeah, just watch me. And he goes and he gets there to essentially save the day.
Yeah, I mean, it was exciting. It was exciting to watch, so it happened. At that point, I'm kind of out of the experience, so my brain starts to nitpick things, and I was just kind of like, oh, like what incredible timing that like he goes all the way from over there, all the way over here, and he gets there at that specific time. That happens on TV and movies all the time. So it's not necessarily a knock, but it started to stack up for me. So I started to like see things like that. But yeah, I thought it was exciting. I kind of took I noticed something. I noticed something in season 1, and it kind of carried over to this episode. And again, I don't think it's like that deep, but something I noticed. Where in the first season there was a black actor, he was like an Imperial officer, I think. I thought it was interesting how the dynamic was, he was the one where I think it was this way, his position was in jeopardy by, I think it was by the woman. Is it Deidre?
Deidre, yeah.
Am I? Yeah.
No,
Am I saying that correct?
yeah. They're the half of the actors have a British accent, so it sounds a little different, some depending on who's saying it. But yeah, her name's Deirdre. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just noticed that dynamic just because there aren't very many black actors in Star Wars at all. So when they show up, I'm kind of pay attention a little bit more.
I mean, take a look at A New Hope. There's, I believe, 0.
Yeah.
So
0. Yeah. And this is. I just was kind of, because I was so like kind of checked out by the time I got to this moment, there was the black officer was sitting in the whatever vehicle, and he was asleep, and I was like the one person he's asleep on the job. But it kind of bothered me because I was like, there's an intentionality to like casting, and so it was like it didn't just kind of happen,
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing a little subconscious pattern, maybe. I don't know. But again,
I'm
like
laughing because I didn't even think about it, and I should have. But I yes, I saw that, and I knew that actor was black, but I wasn't thinking about any of it. I was just like, oh yeah, this is the guy out there. But yeah. Oh, so the one guy who's sleeping.
It's like the one guy. Yeah.
Nobody else is sleeping on the job.
Everybody else, I'm just saying, but I'm not trying to say there's like some agenda or anything either, but it's like, I'm seeing, I noticed it, I think it's kind of subconscious a little bit. It's like you have, I just noticed that power dynamic in the last, it was like, it wasn't between a white officer and a white woman. It was like people on the lower rung of society, of our society, fighting for this position, and so I'm seeing this happen as well.
Yeah,
this is probably why I don't enjoy Andor as much as everybody else. So it's probably a me thing.
And that's why when you responded to the email about that you have, you're looking at it differently. Well, that's exactly why I wanted to make sure we had you at least on this episode. Because look, I've done a lot of after shows. I did a number of shows for a network called AfterBuzz TV, and far too often everybody thought there would be four of us and we all thought the same thing. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, if something's good, it's good. But I was always like, oh, wait, somebody hated this episode. Why? I want to know why, and so I think it's always interesting. And it's like, we watch the same show, and I feel like that's always what it is. And Ivan Soto always appreciates a shout out to AfterBuzz. So as we wind down here, Ryan, your thoughts on what I thought was a very exciting sequence, possibly the most of these 3 episodes. Andor has the conversation on the coded channel that we talked about. What? I gotta go. I'm gonna rescue. So all of his stuff towards the end of episode 3, I thought was great. And I'm hoping that we keep that upward trajectory that we had in season 1 after the 3rd episode right into the 4th. I feel like I'll be eating those words next week at this time, but who knows? What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I think it all depends on where they put that Gorman arc in. If that's going to be like in the middle chapter, or if that's going to be the final one, because that's going to be, that's one of the more kind of linchpin. We'll see how they handle it in the new Star Wars canon, but if even in the older one, that's kind of like the linchpin moment of when, most of the universe starts becoming radicalized. So how they handle that, if that's the next group or if that's in the next week, will be interesting to see. But for this particular one, I think I just keep coming back to the scene of Brasso, the way that he is gunned down and then his friends came and warned him that they have to leave so fast. I think was because in a rebellion and in those moments, like not everyone gets a proper, send off for goodbye. And that's the best they can do. The scene of him kind of bailing out the farmer that's been helping him and kind of acting like, I saw there was some confusion online about a lot of people about that he turned them in, but no, I think Brasso was covering for him by saying that. Yep, there you go. Ivan
mentioned this. I've seen people be confused about the former friend of Brasso, Kellen. They think he betrayed him when it's obvious Brasso was covering for him.
Yep.
I'm more like everybody else online. But you're saying this, and Ivan said this, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is good. This is why we do these things, because I like hearing differing viewpoints and people who perceive things differently. I thought that he got sold out, but it's interesting.
The fact that even in that moment when like everything's kind of falling apart, that he's still trying to think of how he can protect these people by making it seem like, they were in on it, so they get left alone. But the other thing I keep coming back to is poor B2. I don't know how that's going to work out. Just heart-wrenching seeing him, like just the idea. Someone on Twitter was talking about how is he just going to be rolling through the fields and accidentally bump into Brasso's body, or like, him looking at the stars all the time, wondering if they were going to go back for him. They can't go back for him. That's not, I don't know how it's going to work. So that kind of stuck with me. I feel sad for him, as we definitely care about our droids in Star Wars.
But, oh my gosh, yeah.
I look forward to where we go next. I think we're going to do another time jump. I think it's the way it sounded that all the blocks are going to be with a decent amount of time jump. So hopefully we can hit the ground running. A lot of what we saw in all the trailers and footage was from this particular arc, so there's not a ton that we know going forward. It's going to be in the next 2, so I'm excited to see that. And I mean, they definitely made some headlines with those 3 episodes, so I'm excited to see what they do next.
As am I, and I'm looking forward to seeing where we go next. And a quick programming note: we've assembled some of our panel for our next episode. We will be doing it on Sunday, which is indeed May the 4th. We'll be doing it at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. But you can, as by doing this show late at night on the West Coast tonight, you can always find it archived on the Geekscape YouTube channel. So if you're interested, make sure you subscribe to the channel. You'll see when we've got new episodes of this show and everything else we do, including Marvel Movie Talk, which we'll be spending a lot of time on Thunderbolts in the week ahead after well, the weeks ahead really is what I guess it comes down to. But also I did do a special episode that we will be premiering tomorrow. I interviewed a children's author, Jeffrey Brown. If you have kids, you might know him from his series of books that are Darth Vader and Son, and a series of those, Sithmas with the Vaders. That's actually not quite what it's called. Anyway, he did a book about the X-Men. So I was excited to talk to him and sort of peeling back that, he kind of got into the characters around the same time I did. So you'll find that right here on Geekscape, and you can find me on social media at Christian DMZ. Diallo, where can people find more of you?
You can find, we're talking about Battlestar Galactica. You can find me and my co-host Jamie Smith on Galactica Actually. We've gone all the way up through middle of season 4, and I guess we're planning on continuing our journey to Earth soon. You can also find me I do sort of impromptu reviews of random things I watch called Another Review That You Didn't Ask For. You can find that on any podcast catcher. And actually I started a website for it as well, so you can find all the episodes there. And that is about it, I think. I do another podcast, TV Obscura, Podcasting After Dark presents TV Obscura, where we go over old 70s, 80s, and 90s TV shows and cartoons.
Excellent. You reminded me I have one other thing to promote. We're doing this month's episode of the Geekscape Book Club on Wednesday. We'll be looking at the original J.M. DeMatteis Creature Commando stories.
Cool.
We spoke with J.M. DeMatteis last year about Craven's Last Hunt, and I ever since then I'm like, let's do Creature Commandos. Well, we had the HBO Max series, so everybody can check that out Wednesday or later. And Ryan, where can people find more of you?
That's right. Here on the Geekscape Network, I'm on the Bulletproof podcast, so that usually goes up on Tuesdays with Chris the Brain constantly. The fun thing about that is a lot of them are 80s and 70s action movies that I've never seen, so that's kind of my place on that panel. Is I'm watching these for the first time, and Chris and Toyman on their usually big fans of the movies, so that's always fun. And then I also write on bulletproofaction.com. I handle a lot of the Marvel movies, Star Wars stuff, sci-fi stuff. Currently doing Andor, and we'll be doing Thunderbolts this weekend, and doing The Last of Us. I just wrote the review for that before I hopped on here tonight. So, this is the big point. Bulletproofaction.com and the Bulletproof Podcast here on the Geekscape Network. And then you can find me on Twitter at RyCamN7.
Well, we appreciate that, and I always say I appreciate everyone who was in the chat, but tonight I say we appreciate Ivan Soto, who was in the chat.
Salute to you, Ivan.
Yeah, we appreciate you being in there, and we look forward to seeing you on May the 4th, and we look forward to that. And as we will say that day, may the force be with you. But we appreciate everybody who's given us their time. Thanks again to Katie, Ryan, Diallo, and this show will be back on May the 4th, a little bit earlier, and we look forward to talking more about it. So good night, everybody.